Hello to anyone listening. I'm Jessel, one of the producers for Tell and your host for this episode of Tell Talks. Today I'm joined with Jeff from Art of Protest in York. Jeff, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Good afternoon, morning or evening, Jessica. Thank you for having me on Tell Talks. So my name is Jeff Clark. I'm Director of Art of Protest Projects, a production and creative art industry based creative based in York. We deliver large-scale production of murals, events, bars, parties, and engage with large-scale community projects as well as smaller ones.
Beautiful, nice. Right, so to start, where are you from and what is it known for?
Okay, I'm from York, the sunniest place in the world right now, and it's well known for its chocolate, I believed. Also rail industry, Rowntrees, Quakers, but probably more at the moment, more of a liberal-based city in the north of England with a large minster and the most complete walled medieval city in northern England. Ba-doom.
Beautiful. For anyone interested, I'm from Burton-on-Trent, and they are known for not very much except for carling. So there's that. So Art of Protest then is sort of has its roots in fine art, but do you want to talk a little bit about how that has kind of developed into what it is now? Because my understanding is more kind of like street art and tattoos and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So the story of AOP is one of my own, really, which is I set out from quite early years as a dyslexic young man, struggled my way through secondary school. I ended up going to a grammar school. We and my friends struggled to find a place within our schooling system and ended up getting loads of trouble, but made us really good at the secondary socialisation of how to figure out what was going on within the social politics within a school ground. So as I went on from that point, and I skipped forward a few years, I ended up at college studying social sciences, black and white monographic art. It allowed those skill sets of being able to capture something from an image point of view and then start to use the social sciences, the one that I'd adopted from a playground, right into that of the setting within a professional world. So moved on from that, I studied in the fine art sector and worked within photography industries and worked with a quite well-known retailer at the time called Jessup's and worked my way up to being a senior manager there and learned all the skills from lots of professional photographers of how to go out and create amazing pieces using the technical equipment. So beyond that, I then skipped forward and I then set up photography companies, one which was called Exclusive Images, based over in Ossett in West Yorkshire. And then life changes, move on to different things, and I became, how do I want to explore my photography? I don't want to photograph people in studios running around with bouncy balls. What I want to do is go and capture the real world, much more journalistic, which was much more true to my heart and how I wanted to look at things. So I then got rid of most of my things and went off over to South Africa, where my cousin was, and moved around lots of different game parks and sort of did more studying of animals in the wild and how they were operating. But then what became my bigger interest was actually how the people were being operated within, how racism was so alive, yet not at the forefront, even though it had come out of its apartheid years, and how that operated, which then gave that whole, understanding of where that secondary socialization came into play. Oh, this is the politics, but it's on a much grander scale, and where poverty came into it. So then as a photographer, capturing that and documenting it became really important to me about how people had a relationship with where they were geographically, which then was very useful in later years because that's then understanding of why people look at art, because it's a relationship they have with their lives and something that they've done. So how do we want to pull on heartstrings? How do we make people think about things? So skip forward beyond doing the expedition-y stuff and learned with a company called World Challenge, and I got to go on lots of different expeditions and use my photography, my expedition skills. I then came out of that and I basically went and worked with a company called Washington Green, this Europe's largest fine art publisher, initially to learn about how to commercialize my own images, how to actually make a wage from that thing. Why is an artist an artist? It's because they make something. Why is an artist actually capable of living in the world around them without making nicky-nacky news and selling it to their friends? It's because they've got a commercial angle on it. Now, either someone's commercial for them or they're commercial on their own. I was commercial, but I wasn't quite understanding how to get that sort of the understanding of how to translate what was an authentic piece of art, what you were talking about, commercializing it without bastardizing it and turning it into something which was, all wrapped up in bows and hallmark. And there's ways of doing this. And as it went through my life, you sort of understand of humanization and how do we do things and why do we do them. So went on from working with them, had a really successful trend, and it took me all over the country working with this fine art group of Castle and working with their flagship brands down in London. And I moved down to London to work with them and ended up managing Ronnie Wood's art collection that he was producing. We had an amazing gallery down there, 5-story Edwardian townhouse in Bruton Street, and it was fantastic and a lot of fun, great pie, hanging out, Rolling Stones, very good. And from there, I worked with a company called Symbolic, who were the ones in charge of it, the American arm of it, and they invited me over to go work with the URL Guggenheim in New York. So I shot over to New York and became a director of an amazing business, helping commercialize the public arm of what art is. And the reason the narrative of that story is important is because it was so fine art that I was dealing in at the time. And it was very, it was understanding commercials, it was understanding why public art is there, the academic element of it, and then moving into the commercial part, which is why we would be creating artwork and why someone absorbs it, why do they want it, how do they have a relationship with it. But the thing which was absolutely stand out to me, and was certainly stand out to the people trying to get new people into galleries, is that there was no relationship with people outside of the art world with the art. So unless you have studied art, loved art, got a parent that points you in the direction of art, galleries and museums are quite scary places because it doesn't explain itself. And whether or not that be the study work of a Miro or a Dali or a Van Gogh, it just looks like scribbles to people. But we understand the refinement and the importance of them because we understand the masterpieces they got to. And it's basically art is either, recording history or history is recording art. Now, most people don't understand that, but they're very comfortable with choosing a fancy car because they make looks and it's nice. They're also comfortable with getting a tattoo and understanding what that means to them because it tells a story. Now, that's no different. How do we have that conversation and how do people understand it? Now, what I realized was that when I was working in some fantastic places around America, Scope Art Fair in Miami, which was part of the Miami Basel show, and people were flooding to a place called Wynwood, and it's where the street artists go and paint. And people were going there. They'd come to the art fairs, they'd wander around, they'd have a glass of fizz, and they'd enjoy themselves. And the very rich, which is what they are, could buy the artwork in those places. But it wasn't obtainable to 99% of the population, and because it didn't have a relationship with them. It was totally purposeful for its area. How do you engage the public? How do you make it, something that's relatable? And we do this through music, because obviously music touches people of all different classes and artists do the same. So when I realized that art could be seen, enjoyed and viewed by everyone of all different classes, ages, religions, it gave me the thought or the spark to maneuver my own career in that direction. So I was putting up large scale pieces along the High Line, around New York, Miami, over in LA, and I was doing this public art movement where maybe the actual artists, the fine artists I was working with, couldn't paint a big mural, but we could get artisans in and they would paint it. These guys would be amazing. And they would suddenly have this honest view where they would be painting and you'd be like, okay, can you paint this? And they'd be yes. And then show me their work. And they'd be painting something that's political, something that's relevant to now. In the same way we watch Rick and Morty, Simpsons, Solar Opposites, South Park, because they have a political nous. They're a fun and engaging thing that we look at, but actually they're quite a clever message that comes through. Street art, not the same, but not different either. And we can look at then how we get the effect through the art that we have. So where we went with that direction was that I needed to move back to York to set up my own business because I have a now 17-year-old daughter. 5 years ago, she was 12 years old and she was in secondary school. Not a dissimilar journey to myself and was struggling, needed me there. So I wanted to come back and be part of her life from a much more hands-on point of view, which has been really successful. That's not because of me, because she's doing great. That's great. And I set up a business with a then business partner called Craig Humble, and Art of Protest Gallery was born. And I basically do all the events, all the exciting stuff around it, and he was very good at doing the gallery day-to-day trade. 3 years ago, we decided to go in separate directions, and he held to the gallery route. And what I did was explore much more the projects-led stuff, which was more interesting to me and where I'd been working towards in my direction. And it just exploded because there was a demand for people to have a communication with the neighbour. When we suddenly found through the political delivery of our parties, be it Trump, Brexit, anti-vax, whatever it is, everyone started hating the neighbour. Everyone doesn't like each other because they've got a political view which has been force-fed through social media. We don't know what's true. We're picking up bits of information, but everyone's an armchair specialist. Well, do you know what we can all agree on? That we can improve something, and that can be the form of communication. And if we just smile at somebody and they smile back, it's actually quite an innocent thing. But you think about the power it does. Now, if we can get through creating a piece of art on a wall that's being done with people and not to them, and it all makes them smile, we do take away age, we do take away creed, colour, religion. We actually get to a point where we're all just feeling the same thing. Now, that's done through qualified engagement. It's done through really good design, working with really solid artists. It's done through amazing conception of the project deliverers and the producers, great stakeholders, and then beyond that, the actual delivery in the media platform to get the result on for any community. So then you become these totems of time set up in different communities, which are really, really powerful. So from that, it started off good, it got better, and now we got busier and busier, and we've expanded our team, and everything's looking really good. But we always keep one eye on the past, which is remember exactly where we came from, which was dyslexic Jeff struggling to talk to people in school because he didn't have the same skill set. And I think about that person when I have an effect on them with a piece of art today. So how the transition of moving from academic and fine art into the urban art sector, which I think are somewhat one in the same now. But for me, that's why I do what I do at the moment. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. It's a very interesting story and everything. It's lovely to hear it. So you are coming up to your second birthday of protest. Is that right? Congratulations, if yes.
Thank you. Yeah, so AOP Projects is officially 2 years old, and that's very exciting time. So 2 years old, achieving lots of crazy stuff, and it's been, that's what people talk about roller coasters. It really was, because when we got that big enforced horrible situation, coronavirus, which actually locked us all down, set up the actual business out of the back end of that properly. I've been working as self-employed within the project sector. It's really powerful now to be able to look back on that journey and think what an amazing thing that we had and where it's come from, where it's going to now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I get the idea that fine art, like many other creative industries, as not even just a young person, just as someone of any age who is trying to get a foot in the door, it can be very difficult unless you kind of know the right people. So what kind of advice do you have for people who are trying to get into the fine art industry, and kind of what do you want to see more of as well going down the line?
But I think, again, fine art and urban art, slightly different things in terms of accessing it. Fine art, I think, as you well know, from your background of what you've looked at, and again, looking at the history of art, are paramount to understanding the art that's come before us. So if you wanted to access the industry that I was in, as we speak, it would be experience. And if I said to somebody, I don't have any experience, I'd say, well, follow and be tenacious, because then that's how you go get experience. Knock on the door once, knock on it twice, knock on it 10 times if you've got to, but focus on what you want to do. We've all seen young people, as we've been, and where we job sites and they just spray their invoice out, or also an invoice, the CV, just trying to get it out there so that people can see what they're doing, and hopefully a job sticks and then they'll learn a new job. Whereas if you create that vision, the thing that you really want, and I want to understand it, or you really like that company, research it, find it, and go find the person to speak to. Email them until you get a bit of experience. Offer your time. In life, what we have more than anything, the most important currency we have is time, because it's the thing that we can't get back, so it's more valuable than anything else. We earn more money. We can't earn more time. And all we do is, as we earn more money, try and buy more holidays and buy more time. So we've got to think about, as a person trying to access an industry, what can you give? You can give your time, and for that you get skills, and your skills have become very valuable. And certainly in a trade where artistry is absolutely massive, the ability to go and communicate with people and be artists lift higher people. It could be the actual the delivery of an event. It could be the community you're speaking to. But understanding how to vocalize and be able to have the lingo and speak the language that many people can't is really important. So that would be one step in that direction. Fine art, again, different. There is definitely an academic route for that one, as there is for most, because ultimately education is power. The more we know, the better we are. Hopefully, the more grounded we become, and the better we are to everyone around us. But if I was trying to get someone to get into the industry today, we ask people to come and if they want our time, we want their time too, and we'll happily invest in people who want to learn, and so that we can hopefully work together in the future.
Yeah, it's exactly. And even just for some of the projects that we do, but even just for this podcast, just me trying to get guests on, I've just been emailing out to as many people as possible, kind of law of averages. Some of them are going to reply eventually. And I could not really quite believe the amount of people that were just willing to give up their time. They're like, yeah, all right, give me a date and time, I'll be there. And it's like, you don't really realize, and it can be quite intimidating as well, being a creative out on your own, that if you email people and say, look, these are my skills, this is the time I have, what have you got for me? Most times they'll be like, well, I can't promise you this, but I can give you this in the meantime. Even if they can't give you exactly what you want, they do tend to appreciate that you've put yourself out there anyway. But so just on that, what are you kind of hoping to see more from in this industry, kind of in the next 5 years and then in the next 10 years? So what would you like more of?
I would like us to uphold the things which are definitely buzzwords of diversity and sustainability. We can ask ourselves what that actually means. And then we can look at how we want those things to progress into the artistic industry itself. I don't think they're nearly diverse enough. I don't think that's the art world's fault. I just think that that's grassroots investment and time and energy, where we can say, well, if we, for example, use the analogy of the England football team, where we wonder why we haven't got the world's best players, and then they invest in the grassroots football team, and then 10 years later magically appears these amazing players who get to finals. It's no different. We just need to be realistic and not take away artistic delivery and then not value it financially. So we need to start art early, let children learn through play, as we do as adults also, and let people be experimental. And it's not bad just to make a mess. It's okay, because that's expression. So accessing an industry and being able to turn yourself into a professional is just a learning through experience, as we said before.
Yeah, absolutely. So are there any kind of programs or anything that you know of that people could potentially get onto, or any like community groups? What kind of would you recommend for someone who is starting absolutely new?
I think if we're talking urban art sector, I would say look up who you find are the urban art leaders. So most of the time within the art industry is that you can either follow artists or you can follow curators or producers. So we fit in the curation and producers element, and you understand that what we're to do. So like some of my close knit friends who have done very well in the urban art world all just started out with making group shows. They'd find artists, they liked art, they'd hang out with them. They'd put on shows, they'd write about them, they'd try and create a bit of historical importance. So doing something. So the best thing I can see, if someone came to me and said, can I have a job? I'd say, what do you have experience-wise? And they'll go, it's not highly produced and flashy, but I've had a go at doing this. And I'd say, that sounds like the sort of person I would want on my team, because I want to feel that somebody's had a go at doing something, and they don't mind if it's successful or not. They want to have a go. Obviously, if it is successful, it's all the better, but it doesn't matter. I just want them to have a go at it. So if there's ways to do it, there is loads of good art courses out there which go from art handling to how to managing your time. The artistic industry is quite challenging because every Tom, Dick, and Harry with a camera now is a photographer. So it's like, how do you compete as a photographer, for example? How do you compete against people who have lots of wealth, who can go to every audition within the theatre mode, and they can go for every single part every day because they don't need to hold down a job to pay for their apartment. It's hard, but you've got to be competitive. Well, that's just the point. It's a competitive industry, and it is accessible, but it's accessible via the way of exchanging, sadly, your time for free very early on, which is just the same as going to school or to college. It's just the same as giving your time so you can learn the trade, so that when you go into it, you hit the ground running. Because most of the time, most of the mold of the businesses, they are not massive. So they can't afford to take on like 10 apprentices and train people through it. If you're going to give up your time, they'll give up their time. But it's normally more one-to-one, so you'll learn much faster on the job. But equally, if you're not invested in it, it's very difficult for the company that you're working with to give equal investment. So learn as much as you can before you go to somebody, and then when you go to somebody, to what you want to try and get out of it and meet them halfway.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you very much. Right. On a less serious note, who would play you in a film about your life? You have had time to think about this. This is going to be
Yeah,
great.
I did when you asked me this before. I was like, it's Tom Hardy, isn't it? For sure.
Oh yeah, what were we saying before? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
On that, I
I'd
am
take it.
watching that trilogy of Batman this week, so I have
Oh, so
that one to look forward to. Yeah.
have you seen the Robert Pattinson one that's just come out?
Me neither. I was supposed to see it on Wednesday, but I've had COVID this week, so we had to cancel. Sad
Oh,
times.
no.
So I've had to look forward to. But
Yeah,
isn't it 3 hours long?
You want what? I think
It's
so. Yeah,
3
it's like
hours
2
long,
hours
yeah.
15 minutes. It's just a long old film, isn't it? But hopefully I think it's interesting that the film industry went from making films about an hour and a half long, and then when we got the streaming industry, there was occasional films at 3 hours, but now it seems to be like the go-to. Every Marvel film seems to need to be about 3 hours, and I just don't have the quality of the attention span to offer something which is just flashy. If it doesn't have really good character development, really good direction, good script writing,
Yeah.
and throwing around loads of soft violence, can entertain down to a degree, and it's all right for a Sunday afternoon of nothingness. But I think when you are looking for something a little bit more nourishing, there isn't a lot of things out there. So if there's just throw 3 hours at you, it's got to be good enough to hold your attention for that period of time.
Yeah, it is meant to be quite good. But my theory is they're making films longer and longer, and because people can't focus for that long, they're doing these like the Disney Plus series and stuff. They are like 10-hour long films that they've just chopped up into half-hour segments. It's absolutely nuts, and it's great that these things are getting the budget. But anyway, so if you could have anyone to dinner in the world and you've got 3 spare seats at your table, who are you inviting, dead or alive?
I'm going to go with Nelson Mandela,
Nice.
Howard Marks, and Bob Marley.
A good mix. Nice. I think where I'd go Freddie Mercury any day of the week. Probably Vicky McClure. I like Vicky McClure.
Okay.
And maybe Oscar Isaac or Pedro Pascal. One of the two. Not sure. Someone Star Wars based.
Cool,
sorry.
He's a very cool dude, isn't he? Good old Oscar.
Yeah, very. Yeah. But anyway, right. So we're looking at about 5 minutes left. So, what projects have you got that you would like to plug to anyone who is listening?
Well, thank you. So we operate mostly across north, west, east, South Yorkshire, and then we jump into Manchester, London, and overseas projects. But currently we're working on a fantastic one which continues a job we were doing in Doncaster, which is going to take us on an amazing walkway from the station, where we just painted a huge mural with Nomad Clan, all the way through to the Civic Quarter where the theatre is. And we're going to be creating bookended projects. Now, every single one will be of these murals, which we're going to be trying to do 6 of, with really world-leading artists. And we're going to be looking to put them on huge gable ends that leads us around the landscape. So these huge, larger-than-life pieces, which are an amazing narrative and storytelling, with some of the world leading artists. That'll be delivered over the summer, all being well. And that would be something definitely keep an eye on. Each one of them will have launch events, parties, NFTs, and For those who don't know what an NFT is, it's basically those in the digital currency world who can then buy up part of the digital art. And if you were to buy into them, it keeps the money as most as possible within the artist's pocket, and the people who create them. And so it's a really good way. So if then we can link it back to a community, we can keep the money being traded into them. And it's something that can be bought quite cheap. And it could go as far as, some of them might fall flat, like buying a property, but some of them could be like buying real estate in Manhattan in the 1820s and could make you a lot of dollar. So I would say keep an eye on us for commercial purposes, but also the public and the interest of the communities that we will be doing around there. We've got a lot of other projects which are operating. We're doing power designs in Malton, Harrogate, York, Leeds, and we've got an amazing wildlife project coming up, which is a super secret squirrel, but that will hopefully be launched soon down the line as well. If you want to find out about us, if you go to artofprotest.co.uk, you'll find us. That's a project-based business. To all the information on there, you can join our mailing list and we'll keep you up to date. We have a really good Instagram on AOP Projects, which is updated most days. On Facebook also. You can get in touch with me directly if you want. I'm sure my email will be flashed on here somewhere. If anyone wants to talk to us, we would be happy to do so. And then the last little cheeky one is that one of our members of our team we did a lot in parties, bars and warehouse projects, which is music and whiskey tasting and all sorts of crazy stuff, which is really good for the soul and the taste buds. The beginning of April, we're going to be doing a launch around a new bar scheme, which will be in the centre of York. It's a little, I'm going to say it's not invite only, it's going to be ticket only. And that's going to be Craig Feather from Flint and Feather doing that for us. There we go.
That all sounds fantastic. So thank you very much. And thank you very much for giving up your time to kind of be on the podcast and talk to us. So that is at AOP Projects on Instagram. But thank you very much, Jeff. And to anyone listening, see you next time.
Thanks so much for having me.